Greetings and welcome everyone. My name is Lokita Maka. As I always say, one day I will not need to introduce myself, and hey, you can help me with that. So if you find this lesson useful and helpful at the end, please share with other people, comment, like, and yeah, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Thank you so much. And hey, Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year. All right. So in this session, I want us to discuss all things animal nutrition for grade 12 agricultural sciences, but the focus will be on the composition of feed. So sichaya isaqhuma bantasa. Now, there is a detailed video on animal nutrition and digestion I did in 2001. So please go to that video, watch it, and then this particular one will make sense. It is going to help you to link everything up. So I'll put up a link on the description here so that you can actually go to that video. But just to recap, in that video, I did a comparison on external structure of the alimentary canal of a ruminant, which is like your cows, your sheep, basically just cattle, sheep, goats, those are ruminants, right? And non-ruminants, which includes your fowls and your pigs, right? I also looked at the internal structure of the rumen, the reticulum, the omasum, as well as the abomasum. I also touched on small intestines with its functions, and yeah, basically this is what you need to know. So please go back to that video, do a recap, and this will actually help you with your week 1 and your week 2 contents for grade 12 agricultural sciences. So now I want us to look at animal nutrition at a different angle so that we can have a broader understanding of what is going on here. As you can see on the screen, it is important to know that animals can be grouped according to type. So there are feeding groups, which are basically classes of animals, and there are types of animals in the group as well. And also, it is important to know just examples, guys. An example of a feed they normally consume. So now let's look at this diagram here. So we're going to start with the first feeding class, which are herbivorous ruminants, right? So we will have herbivorous ruminants and also herbivorous monogastric animals, right? Now, when we are talking about monogastric animals, we are talking about animals with single compacted stomachs, right? So your examples of monogastrics will include humans, they will include pigs, they will include horses, rabbits, dogs, cats, right? So most monogastrics are generally unable to digest much cellulose food materials such as grasses, right? Okay, now let's go back to the diagram or to the table. This is a table, guys. So under the herbivorous feeding class, the types of animals there will be cattle, will be antelopes, will be sheep, will be goats, will be your horses, your donkeys, and your rabbits. So the first four, these fall under the ruminants. Those are herbivorous ruminants. Then the last three are your herbivorous monogastric animals. So now, what type of feed do these animals eat? Now, these animals basically eat plant materials, right? They eat grasses, bushes, shrubs. So Yeah, they may also eat like some concentrates like grains as well. Then we've got omnivorous monogastric, right? Now, this will take you back when you first understood what an omnivore is. So now an omnivore, like myself, will be an organism or an animal that will eat both plants as well as animal materials, right? So the animal types here, we will have your pigs, we will have your domestic as well as your wild poultry. So now what do they eat? What are the examples, right? So they will basically eat your plant materials, they will eat meat, they will also eat insects, some will even eat fish, right? Then we've got the third feeding class, which is your carnivorous animals, right? So and examples here are your lions, your dogs, cats, crocodiles, and now what do they eat? They basically eat other meat products. They also eat fish, right? Because this is basically an animal, right? So now let's look at the feeding strategies of animals in which can be grouped according to the feed utilization. So this will be a refresher to you because in grade 10, you were taught of extensive grazing, intensive grazing, as well as zero grazing. So if you cannot remember, just take this time, try and think about it. But what I can tell you is that the examples of the feedstuffs and the use, which is the third column, will actually refresh your memory on that, right? Now let's look now at the animal types, right? Now, if we're talking of extensive grazing, now which animals can then be fed using this type of grazing, right? So these can be your game animals, these can be your beef cattle, these can be your sheep, your goats, and also your horses. Now, someone will ask, okay, why beef and why not dairy cows? Now, this again will take you back to grade 10 because beef and dairy cows have different characteristics, right? So now looking at the examples of the feedstuffs when it comes to extensive grazing. Now here we are talking about natural vegetation. We are talking about felt that consists of grasses, shrubs. We are talking about and now in terms of use, now these type can be used whenever the animal graze or browse. Now again, this will take you back when you first understood the difference between grazing and browsing, right? Which is something that you need to note at all times. Then let's look at the intensive grazing. Now your dairy cows, mutton sheep, horses again, chickens, and sometimes even pigs, you can explore intensive grazing. And now the examples will be your cultivated pastures, and also some crop residues that may be provided by the farmer. Then with zero grazing, now these can be your feedlot animals, your dairy cows, chickens, pigs. So here there will be a variety of feedstuffs that are fed to animals, right? So in most cases now what will happen is that the diets will have to be balanced because now you are bringing the feed to the animal. So another thing that you need to note is that feeds can be grouped according to the general origin and appearance or the way it was processed, right? So it's one thing that you need to note. And Also, like this feed that we are talking about, it can be fed in different forms. So that's another thing that you need to note. So it may vary from natural pastures to complete food feeds, and also from supplements to natural felt. Now, let's look at the components of feed, guys. What are the components of feed? Now, remember, all I'm trying to do is simplify what you have been taught in class or what you will be taught in the classroom. So that's basically what I'm trying to do. Now, I want us to try by all means to simplify the components of feed. I want us to simplify this diagram here. So now, what you need to note is that the basic nutrients that are contained in the animal feed include water, they also include proteins, they also include carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, as well as minerals. So animals may develop certain diseases now if their feed lacks one of these essential nutrients. So if now there's a lack of water, there will be a problem. If there's a lack of proteins, there will be a problem. Lack of carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, as well as minerals, there will be a problem. So now let's simplify this diagram. So now the feed is divided into two things: water as well as dry material, right? So that is very important to note. Now, when it comes to dry material, the dry material is divided into organic material as well as inorganic material. Now, let's take the other leg now, which is the organic material. So the organic material is also divided into two. It's divided into nitrogenous components and non-nitrogenous components. Now, somebody will ask, okay, Dr. M, what is nitrogenous components? Now, nitrogenous components includes your true proteins as well as non-proteins, whereas non-nitrogenous components include your carbohydrates as well as fats. Now, it's as simple as that. So now you need to know is that feed is divided into two: water as well as dry material. But now this dry material, once you have taken out water, it's divided into organic as well as inorganic material. But now coming to the organic material, it's divided into nitrogenous as well as non-nitrogenous components. Now, the non-nitrogenous components are your carbohydrates and fats, and your nitrogenous components are your true protein as well as your non-protein. So your non-protein nitrogenous compounds, right? So you need to know that from the back of your head. Okay. Now, before we proceed with all of these components, your dry matter as well as water, or your organic and inorganic compounds, your non-nitrogenous and your nitrogenous, now I want us to look at water in the feed. Like, why is water important? Now, this is the important. So as I have mentioned earlier, now that feed will contain a certain amount of water. Now, you also need to be able now to calculate this, but we will get there. So water is not really a nutrient, but it is essential, right? It has a very vital role or roles in the animal's body. And it is important to note that it takes about 50 to 70% of the animal's total volume. So the body needs high percentage of water to perform certain functions Already that is important. So now let's look at the functions that are listed in the slide. So I don't have to read this to you. You can pause from here, you can write them down, but also this is something that you know. Now remember, when we are talking about animals, it's important for you to also just relate animals to us as human beings. So water is important because it dissolves chemicals in the body. Now this is done via the bloodstream, right? And it is the medium in which now all chemical reactions take place. Now another important aspect of water in an animal feed is that it controls the body temperature through sweating and panting. Now, even with us as humans, now if it's hot, your brain will tell you that, okay, now you need water. And why is that so? Because there are a lot of chemical reactions that happen and you will get to be dehydrated. So a lot of water will be used in the system and you will need to hydrate as often as you can. Right? And now if it's sunny, if the temperatures are high, now you will be sweating a lot. So now it means that now some of the water is excreted, right, out of your system. So now you will need now to replace water, right? Now when it comes to dairy cows, right, water helps dairy cows to actually produce large amounts of milk. So you can go on, read as many functions that you can find, and also think about functions of water in an animal feed that you can think of, and make sure that you are able to relate them to a human being, because this will actually help you understand it better, and it will help you not to forget. It will help you to remember when it comes for you to answer that question, because it's the same thing. Because another important thing is that it lubricates the joints. So it allows now these joints to move or to function easily. Right? So I hope this makes sense. And water allows excretion of waste. So this can be through urine, this can be sweating. So guys, just take your time. You don't have to rush this. Just try and take your time. Go through the functions. You don't even have to consult your textbook. You just have to think about them. Think about the importance of water now in humans first. Then that will make it easy for you to align it to animals. Animals become dehydrated if they don't drink enough water. So this is the same with us as human beings. And then, now if they become dehydrated, what does that mean? It means that they cannot function normally. So a dairy cattle now will need a particular daily intake of water, so as your horses, so as your beef, so as your sheep, your pigs, and poultry, right? So now you must be asking yourself, right, how many liters do animals need to take daily and how frequent, right? So now let's look at these species. Now we've got your cattle, we've got horses, sheep, and goats. We've got pigs, we also have poultry. Right? Now, when we're looking at cattle, now cattle will need water at least twice a day. Now, how much water do they need? I think that should be the next question. So now when it comes to beef cattle, so beef will need about 45 liters of water. Right? Remember, with us as human beings, we need about 2 liters. Now, on average, a dairy cattle will need 70 liters of water. That is like the daily intake in liters. So, but with the frequency, they will need water for about 2 times a day. Right? Then looking at horses, right? So horses as well will need water twice a day, and they need about up to 50 liters of water per day. Then we've got sheep and goats. They also need twice a day, and they need up to 10 liters a day. So now already looking at the size of these animals, this must tell you that, okay, now, the larger the animal, then more water they need, right? Now, we have pigs. So in terms of pigs and poultry, they must always have access to water. So with pigs, they need about 20 liters, up to 20 liters per day. Then with poultry, they need up to, let's say, 200 mils to 500 milliliters. So like your 0.2 up to 0.5. So between those two, right? But they must always have access. Now let's look at the second composition of feed, which is the dry matter. Although water is vital, right? Now, the high moisture levels in feed can actually limit the nutrient intake. So the feed that basically remains when the water has been refed is what we call the dry matter. Right? So now, the dry matter of the feed is conveniently divided into organic and inorganic, as I have mentioned before. Right? Now, although in living organism, there is no sharp distinction, right? And why is that? So, for example, now, in proteins, the proteins will contain nitrogen, but some will also contain sulfur. And now when it comes to lipids and carbohydrates in plants, some will contain phosphorus, and also iron is also a structural part of the hemoglobin molecule. Right? So there are what we call now microelements. So now this again will take you back when you land of microelements as well as macro element. Right? So for example, now some of the microelements are, for instance, connected to the functioning of the enzymes. So now it's important. Now this is the task that I'm giving you. Go back. Either you consult your textbook, the current textbook that you have, you look at the nutrients, different nutrients that are needed by animals, and also the functions in the body, right? So for example, just briefly, if you look at crude protein, now the crude protein is the building block of all protein-containing materials in the body. Right? That is your muscles, your connective tissues, your milk, fiber, blood, and some of the enzymes as well as hormones, right? Then we've got your carbohydrates, right? Or your starches. Now, these supply the day-to-day energy for the whole metabolism, the body's metabolism, right? And then we've got fats and oils. Right? Now, the fats and oils basically supply extra energies, right? Extra energy during times in which now carbohydrates are too few, right? Then we've got fiber, crude fiber. Now, crude fiber will contain some carbohydrate and also all starches that can be utilized by some of the animals, right? Then we've got minerals such as calcium, we've got minerals such as potassium, your phosphorus, your sodium, chlorine, magnesium, sulfur, iron, as well as vitamins. Now, when it comes to vitamins, basically in general, right, they are either a part of or they actually help to activate the enzymes and the core enzyme systems of the body. Now, vitamins are essential for all aspects of energy transmission in the body. So now the task that you have is to actually check these out, check these nutrients out. For example, if we are talking about magnesium, now magnesium is basically an activator for many different enzymes and it plays a role in balancing body fluids. So now, if you're still listening to me up to this far, I want you to actually just select few nutrients that you can think of. It can be your calcium, then you give the function. It can be phosphorus, you give the function. It can be your potassium, then you give the function as well, the function in the body. You can also choose the ones that I have mentioned, especially if it's those that you actually know by head, because you need to understand these and actually know their function, right? So one of the important things you need to know when it comes to dry matter is being able to calculate it. So whether you are doing maths or you are doing maths lit, this will not be difficult. This will not be difficult. You just need to read the English that is there on your question paper, guys. Then you calculate. You need to know the formula. So the basic formula of dry matter is equal to the total weight of the feed minus the moisture content. So it's the feed, the total weight of feed minus water, basically. So that is the basic formula. But it can also be expressed as a percentage. So now, what will this mean? Right? The percentage now of dry matter is equal to now the dry matter, which is in grams, divided. So it can be grams, it can be kilograms, depending on what you have been given, right? And then you divide this by the total weight of the feed. Then what you will do now is to multiply by 100. I think let's end it here for this session. Once again, my name is Lokita Maka. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. If you're still listening up to this far, thank you so much for your support. Please do give me a feedback on the comment section down below. And yeah, once again, my name is Lokita Maka. All I'm trying to do is to try and simplify what your teacher has done. Try and simplify a week's work or even 2 weeks in less than an hour. Otherwise, that's it from me. Until next time.